My name is Steve. Welcome to my shop and Shark Bits number 39. In this edition of Shark Bits, I've got some viewer mail. I've got a few tools that I purchased for the shop. We're going to cover a little bit of a shop update, and I've got a couple of little machining projects that I'm going to share with you that don't lend themselves to their own standalone video. Got a lot to cover, so let's get started. I'm going to move the camera around so we can get a close-up of the items that I got from Kimber. Kimber Zelik is a truck driver that is a matter of months away from retirement, and he has purchased a mini lathe to have something to do as a hobby in his retirement. So he has a YouTube channel now, which is his venture into machining as he learns to use his mini lathe and works on some small projects. I will leave a link to his channel in the description of the video. As I understand it, Kimber comes from a family of tool and die makers. I believe his dad and his uncle were tool and die makers. So he has a pretty good assortment of precision tools. And not only that, but he has purchased a few boxes and a few lots from some other people. And he sent me a couple of items. This first item, actually, he listed on one of his videos, and he asked if anybody was interested in it. And it is an original Johansson Ford Joe block or gauge block. It's 4 inches. It's in very good condition. And it just so happens that I purchased 2 incomplete sets of gauge blocks a year or so ago, just to have some spares that I use for setup in the shop and so on. I do have a complete set of relatively new ones that are very good quality. But these 2 incomplete sets that I bought, I was able to combine them together, and I only ended up being missing 2 blocks to make another complete set, and one of them was the 4-inch. So this would be a nice addition. Plus the history. This actually marked, I don't know whether you can see it or not. I'll try and zoom in on it. Johansson Ford Dearborn. This is the original Joe block, and I am very pleased to have it. He also included in it a Starrett number 289A, and what this is, it's a right angle block that you can mount 2 scales in to form a right angle. I'll go over to my box and pull out a scale, and I'll install it in here and show you how it works. Okay, this is how it mounts. This will slide on a regular combination square rule. This one happens to be a Craftsman, and I keep it around because it's actually, my grandfather was a tool and die maker, and this one's got his name etched in it. So I keep this around. It's one of those pieces that I'll never get rid of. And then I have another smaller, this happens to be a Brown and Sharp, and this one, other one is adjustable. You can put a narrower one, and the screw is long enough that you can put another wide ruler in here also. But it forms a right angle. Could be handy for layout work when your square head isn't maybe long enough or large enough. Very handy tool to have. Okay, he also gave me a 1/4-20 pulley tap, which is very handy. I have some pulley taps, but believe it or not, I don't have a 1/4-20, which is probably one of the more popular sizes. And a couple of nice new reamers. This one is a 3/16. They're brand new. Nice to have a sharp reamer when you need it. And this one is a 1/8. Here's his channel sticker. So thank you very much, Kimber. I really appreciate it. Okay, this next item that I'm going to share with you is a set of Brown & Sharp tapered parallels. And I believe it's a number 672 is the set number. And what they are, they're like a set of adjustable parallels, except that they're loose and they have a radius on the edge. And what they're designed for is to measure inside diameters of circular features. And this particular set, it will measure from 1/4 inch up to 1 inch. It was featured by Chuck Bomarito of Outside Screwball and also Tom Lipton of Ox Tools. They both featured this set. And when I saw it, I decided that I really wanted one. I want to show you how it works. I have this casting that I machined. It's actually the base for a Stewart V10 steam engine that I started many years ago. Maybe someday I'll finish it. And it was bored. It's a little oversized. I ran into a problem with it, with cutting a severe taper. I started this on a very small, it's a Shoreline lathe that I was using for model making. And it just was not rigid enough to cut the length of this bore straight. I just couldn't get it straightened out. It's one of the reasons that I ended up buying my 6-inch Atlas, and I finished this on the 6-inch Atlas. So it went a little bit oversized, which is fine. I just have to make a new custom size sliding head for it. It was supposed to be 5/8, and it actually measures 640 thousandths, which is 15 thousandths oversized. So there's a range here, and this one, the range that I need is from 39/64 to 11/16. So that takes a letter C and a letter E. And see, when you slide them up and down, of course, the width changes. So I'm going to put them in the bore. And now I can measure them with a micrometer. It measured just a little bit under, about 639.5. Now let's try it with a snap gauge, see what we get on that. It's another way of doing it with the snap gauge. So I'm going to try that. The feel on the snap gauges can be a little fussy sometimes. And when I measure with the snap gauge, I usually do it 3 or 4 times. And I'm coming up with just about the same thing. So I'm coming up with the same measurement both ways. But I've got to tell you, this is quick and easy. Just slide them in there like that, snug them up, got your dimension. Very nice. It's a nice addition to my measuring tools. I have owned this Mitutoyo vernier height gauge for quite a few years and have been using it. I'm very happy with it. I don't mind using a vernier gauge. I learned to do precision measurements with a vernier scale back when I was a teenager. So I've been doing it over 50 years. And it works just great. I have no complaints. Except that the maximum height that I can work with is 6 inches. And I was looking for a taller one. And I had been looking at some new stuff. I really didn't want to buy a Chinese piece. And to be perfectly honest with you, the new Starretts and so on, they're just out of touch for a home shop as far as price is concerned. I just can't justify the cost. I've looked at some used ones, but I mean, ideally, I'd like to have a digital height gauge with a dual beam that measures down to the 10th, but I don't need it. This is all I really need for the work that I do. So I started looking on eBay and I found this very nice Brown & Sharp. It's got a 12-inch range on it. It's in excellent condition. It also comes with an adapter on it that you can use to measure depths inside. This is a probe that you can actually measure the depth. So that comes in really handy. I've never seen that come through with any of the other ones that I've seen on eBay. This came pretty complete. In addition to it, there are 2 straight edges. These are Starrett straight edges. They'll come in handy. I'll put them in my toolbox. There's 2 of them there. And a few other odds and ends of accessories. Some that go with it, some that don't. Oh, this nice little telescoping gauge. And this one is a Lufkin. Lufkin makes excellent precision measuring tools. The scribe that's in it right now is a high-speed steel, and it came with a carbide scribe and it needed a little sharpening. And I put it in my surface grinder and started grinding it with the diamond wheel, and I tightened it up a little bit too much in my clamp, and when I loosened it up I had cracked the carbide and broken it off. So I will be, in a future video, I'll be remaking a carbide scribe for this. I'll order in a piece of carbide and silver solder it onto a piece of steel, and then we'll surface it and sharpen it on the surface grinder. Another project. So I'm real happy with this. Say it's in excellent condition. Just clean it up a little bit, and I have another nice addition to my metrology department of Shark River Machine. I'm going to ask for some help here. I know that I've got viewers that are a lot more experienced with steam than I am, which is almost everybody because I have no experience with steam. But I got this set of castings in the same estate that the Stewart S50 came in, that I just finished repairing. And it looks to me like a wobbler steam engine, where that would be the block, the cylinder block. That's the base. I'm assuming that that would be the rough out for the flywheel. That's probably a cylinder head. And there's the crank. It also came with some additional materials. I've got a spring and some dimensional material. This all came with it. Some hardware. I don't know whether that's part of it or not. But if anybody recognizes this kit and can enlighten me on it, I had asked about it some time ago, and someone actually told me exactly what it was, but it's been a long time ago and I don't remember. And I think that there was even a drawing available for it. So if you can help me out, I'd really appreciate it. I'm going to take you around the shop a little bit. I have been doing some rearranging to make room for the Sheldon horizontal mill. And the area just to the left of that stacked toolbox is where I had my bandsaw sitting, my vertical bandsaw. And I moved the toolboxes over into the space where that was. I still have to move those hardware bins off that wall because I need a little bit more space. I'd like to move the toolbox over a little bit further, closer to the drill press, which is sitting there. And that'll give me a little, actually I think I'm going to move the milling machine down a little bit further and put the horizontal mill up closer to my metrology bench because it's not quite as deep. It'll give me a little bit more room to work around it. Here is my vertical bandsaw. I purchased this, I'm going to say probably 35, 40 years ago, and did pretty much a complete rebuild on it. I glass beaded the whole thing and it was rusty, and I repainted it. I put new rubber tires on it, rebuilt the motor. And until I just moved it, I didn't know what manufacturer it was. And when I moved it, I found the build plate on it. And it's actually a Hutchinson, and it's a 16-inch bandsaw. I use it primarily for wood, although right now I've got it's referred to as a skip tooth blade in it, and I'm able to use that for some aluminum. It works okay. I've considered gearing it down so that I could use it for metal. I'm not sure. I've never really needed it since I got my horizontal bandsaw. I can always use that for steel. But that's been a nice machine, so I moved it out to the outer end of the shop. It's actually next to my surface grinder now. And I'm still playing around with the layout a little bit. But very shortly, now that the weather's getting better, I'm going to be moving the Sheldon mill in. Although my series on the steam engine is completed, I do have a few fittings that I still want to make. And this particular fitting that I'm going to make right now will thread into the exhaust. The cylinder block is tapped for 1/4-32, so that's the first thread that I'm going to put on my piece of 5/16 hex stock. I'm working on my little 6-inch Atlas lathe. It's perfect for these small jobs, and besides that, I like to use it, so I use it wherever it makes sense. to machine this down to 1/4 inch. I'm just using my dial caliper. It's not that critical a dimension. Right now I'm down to 300 thousandths, so I got another 50 to go. $265. Let's finish it up. Perfect. We're about 248, which is just great. I'm going to put a little bit of a bevel on that, and then we'll cut the threads. Just using the square end of my tailstock spindle to square up the die. Okay. Get the tailstock out of the way. Okay, the threads look pretty good. There we go. Now I'm going to knock the burr off of it, and I'm going to drill the fitting before I take it out and turn it around. I'm going to start with the number 2 center drill. Deburr it. I'm going to cut it to length, and we'll turn it around, turn the other side. Automotive sizes, this thread that I'm doing now is referred to as an 1/8 inch inverted flare. Now the 1/8 inch inverted flare uses a 5/16 National Fine thread. So I'm going to cut this down to 5/16 and then we'll thread it. Okay, that's it. I've got it at the 310, which is just about perfect. 312 is 5/16. I like to go just a couple thousandths below that to start the thread, and that'll work. Let's take and put a little bit of a bevel on it to help start the thread. I can deburr the inside. And go set up to thread it. Here's my 5/16 24 die, and I'm going to do the same thing I did before and use the end of the spindle on the tailstock to square it up. Brought the nut over to try it on here. I can't find it. Okay, I raised a little burr on the edge when threading it. Going to knock that off with a file and then try the nut. This is the nut that's supposed to fit on it. That fits perfect. Now what I'm going to do is take the fitting, and I'll do this off camera. I'm going to take the fitting over to my vise. I'm going to turn the die over and thread it on backwards so that I can thread right up to the shoulder. I'll do that off camera and I'll bring you back when I'm finished. Well, there's the finished fitting. Pretty happy with the way it turned out. Now I'm going to try it in the engine, see if it fits. This is going to thread into the exhaust. Perfect. And that's the nut. And that threads on it nicely also. This is the piece of tubing I'm going to use in it. All I have to do is either find or make a ferrule. And then one of the things that I didn't do on this fitting is I didn't cut a taper on the inside for the ferrule. But once I find the ferrule, I'll take and actually cut a little bit of a tapered recess in there for the ferrule to seal against. And that should work. Now let's see if it runs with the restriction on the exhaust fitting. We'll get it all plumbed up here and we'll see if it'll start up. Well, there it is. I know a lot of you haven't seen it running because not too many watched the final episode of the video, but there it is in all its glory. I did have a couple of questions on how it was being powered, so I'll switch the camera around and I'll show you what I'm running it off of. I'm running it off of my little airbrush compressor, and the pressure is so low actually that it's operating on that it's not registering on the gauge, but it's managing to keep up with the volume that the engine is requiring, and I like the speed that it's running at. So I'm pretty happy with it. Well, this project is pretty much done. The only thing that I'm going to do in the future on it, and I'll ask for some interest in the comments, I'm going to be making a couple little oilers, one on each one of these rails, and one each for the main bearings. If you're interested in seeing those oilers being made on the little lathe, just leave a comment and I'll include it in another episode of Shark Bits, or if it's involved enough, I'll have a standalone video on it. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Shark Bits. I hope you've enjoyed viewing it as much as I have enjoyed putting it together for you. I usually don't ask about subscriptions, but I have noticed that many of my viewers, matter of fact more than half of my viewers, have not subscribed to the channel. Make this old man happy and push the subscribe button and then hit the bell so that you get notifications when I produce a new video. I'm trying to get one video out a week now. Maybe I can do better, but at least one a week. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for viewing.